Richard and I were both very deeply moved and affected when, in our childhood, growing up in very different families and in very different parts of the country, we learned about the bombing of Hiroshima, which took place just a couple of years before we were born. Both of us had dreamed all of our lives of making a kind of a pilgrimage to Hiroshima. So when we decided to take a long vacation together, where am I? Yes, we agreed that we would go to Japan. We had many interesting adventures there, but we'll save those for another time, mostly. Today, we want to tell you about what we saw, learned, and experienced on our visit to Hiroshima, and subsequently through research about the bombing of that city by the United States on August 6, 1945.
We've divided this sermon up into two parts. My contribution will be in addressing the question, why was the bomb dropped? And why Hiroshima? What was your earliest age? What was the age when you first saw this picture? I was 5 years old. I distinctly remember my aunt showing it to me. In the next few minutes, our intention is for you to, one, understand some of the lead up to the Hiroshima bombing, and two, to the extent possible for you to feel, hear, see, and sense the utter devastation of the bomb. We will not show you the pictures of suffering, and carnage we've all seen and been sickened by since our childhood. The Pacific War had been going well for the Japanese in 1942 and 43. Ground began to be lost as the Allies conquered island after island across the Pacific. In mid-1944, Saipan was taken from Japan, permitting the construction of airstrips, allowing American high-altitude bombers ready access to the Japanese city. You see the blue circle here? That's where Saipan is, and you can see it in relationship to the rest of the geography in the area. The U.S. dropped 157,000 tons of conventional bombs on Japanese cities. That according to the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey. Literally tens of thousands of bomb runs were made. The Allies repeatedly invited, requested, sued for, demanded, even commanded Japanese surrender. Nearly all was ignored, if not outright ridiculed. Tokyo saw firebombing that killed 100,000 people with a new weapon, napalm. 270,000 Tokyo structures were destroyed in a single night. Now, Japanese citizen enthusiasm for the war was waning. Even public policymakers were discussing ways to end the war. However, in the 4 months before the Hiroshima bombing, even though facing almost certain defeat and surrender, the Japanese military inflicted half the number of Allied casualties that the Allies had experienced in the previous 3 years of the war. The Manhattan Project was an R&D program undertaken to produce the first nuclear weapons. That program evolved to the production of weapons for use on Japan. The goals of the Japanese nuclear bombing were to, one, push the Japanese military to surrender, to thus reduce the loss of Japanese and American lives in the coming land invasion. 2, to demonstrate to the Soviet Union our dominance. And number 3, measure the impact of this extraordinary bomb. Now, a target committee of military personnel, as well as educated, well-informed professors and scholars, chose 5 sites as most likely to achieve the goals of the use of this extraordinary bomb. The criteria used by this committee was, in choosing the sites, the targets would be larger than a 3-mile diameter, a large urban and military area, a port, major military headquarters. The sites would also be manufacturing areas of munitions, steel, aluminum, oil, aircraft, machinery tools, and power production. The site would also be a cultural center. That it would be possible to truly assess the blast effect and damage, meaning that unlikely that the site would have been damaged before August 1945. The 5 sites that were selected were Kokoda, Hiroshima, Yokohama, Niigata, where Pat and I spent a lot of time, and Kyoto. By the way, Kyoto was removed from this list eventually by the Secretary of War, in part because of the knowledge that he gained of the city during his honeymoon. Kyoto was replaced by Nagasaki. On the morning of August 6th, 1945, over 600 bombers took off from various islands for a run to the southern part of Japan. Air raid sirens sounded across Japan. Now, Japanese military intelligence knew something was afoot that morning, but the generals decided not to make an attempt to have the U.S. call off the action. Of the 600 bombers, one lone aircraft split off from the others and flew towards Hiroshima. This was the weather aircraft. They'll be reporting back the weather conditions and whether it's adequate to permit the flight of the Enola Gray with the nuclear bomb dubbed Little Boy, as well as the 2 other aircraft that accompanied the Enola Gay. One was for instrumentation, and the other was to photo document the results of the bombing. These 3 aircraft arrived at Hiroshima on August 6th, a little after 8 a.m.
Written by a singer-songwriter named Joe Crookston, lives in Ithaca. He says that this is a true story that his grandfather told him. And it's kind of the point of view of just a normal American sailor and what their experience had been. My baby girl was born in 1943, the year before the Navy shipped me out and overseas. So I held her and kissed her and said my goodbyes, leaving Virginia with 1,000 other guys. Leaving Virginia in the South Pacific beneath the blistering sun. On Tinian Island there was work to be done. 4,000 Navy Seabees on the ground, crushing up coral and packing it down, crushing and packing it down. They never told us, forbidden to ask. They handed down the orders, we finished the task. We never knew what the runways were for. They said our job would be the one to end the war. Now the Seabees work like hell till the work gets done. We built 4 long runways laid straighter than guns, and the runways they glittered in the sunshine and fog, named Abel and Baker and Charlie and Dog. Abel, Baker, Charlie, and Dog. And the diggers and the cranes and my battalion guys, we paved the way to the Japanese skies. 8,500 feet made of coral and clay, and we built them all in just 53 days. We built them in 53 days. They never told us, forbidden to ask. They handed down the orders, we finished the task. We never knew what the runways were for. They said our job would be the one to end the war. Now the rumors flew around Tinian, none of us ever had a clue what Enola Gay and little boy would do. And in the early August heat, we all got the news that the runways we built were the runways they used. Abel, Baker, Charlie, and Dog. They never told us, forbidden to ask. They handed down the orders, we finished the task. We never knew what the runways were for. They said our job would be the one to end the war.
Those in Hiroshima were caught completely unaware. They had actually left their bomb shelters to return to their daily lives after an all-clear siren had been sounded. This photograph was taken at the Hiroshima Peace Museum. The fission 15 kiloton nuclear bomb was released from 31,000 feet. At 8:15, as I can attest to, the watch that I saw smashed at 8:15, was detonated 1/3 of a mile above the city, 800 feet away from the intended target, the strategic Aioi Bridge over 3 rivers. Ignition occurred immediately over the Shima Clinic. The fireball was 1,200 feet in diameter. The temperature was similar to the center of the sun. Sound of the blast is estimated to be 240 decibels. That is, imagine 2 chainsaws running at full tilt 3 feet from your ear. "1,500 kilotons is shorthand for 15,000 tons of TNT. Keep in mind that which actually exploded in the little boy weighed less than 200 pounds. What is 15,000 tons of TNT? Imagine 400,000 cubic feet of TNT, or a football field. Seven-foot deep TNT. To transport that would require 1.5 miles of trucks. The bomb leveled nearly 5 square miles through a blast force and firestorm. The resulting fire created a 35-mile-per-hour wind of air being sucked into the devastated area to feed the fires. Now, the bomb's energy was released in three forms, fundamentally three forms. One is radiation, another is wind blast, another is pure heat. About 3.3 to 5% of the energy was in radiation. 50 to 60% of the energy was in a wind blast. Keep in mind that there was 1,000 mile per hour wind at blast ground level. A mile away, it was still 200 mile per hour winds. Windows were shattered 13 miles away. And 30 to 40% of the energy was in the form of heat, 7,000 degrees at ground level of the blast. Even a mile away, it was 1,000 degrees. Granite buildings melted. Steel bridges caught on fire. Tiles were blistered 1,000 miles away. This photo that you see is part. In this photo, you see that part of the blast heat was blocked by the bomb victim, his cane. Of the 60,000 buildings in Hiroshima, only 50 that were actually designed for earthquake resistance were left standing. Of the 50, all but one was gutted by fire. Of the 350,000 population, 70 to 80,000 were killed by the blast and the fire. 35,000 were killed instantaneously. 70,000 were also injured. Around 70 to 80,000 died of radiation the first year. Still, the military did not surrender. A 15-kiloton bomb is very small by today's nuclear arsenal standards. The following slide shows the area of total destruction had the bomb been dropped on Kingston. The 2.5-mile diameter total destruction area stretches from the roundout area all the way up to the roundabout by the interstate. The entire area devastated. And if it were dropped on Kingston, perhaps Kingston would look like this.
So this is a song, some of you may know it. It's written from the point of view of a child who died at Hiroshima. And it began life as a poem written by a Turkish poet in Turkish, then translated into English by a woman. The Turkish poet's name was something like Nazim Hikmet Ran. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Anyway, a woman named Jeanette Turner translated it into English and sent it to Pete Seeger and said, maybe you could write a tune for this poem. And Pete didn't find a tune or didn't write a tune immediately, but he found that the words worked perfectly to a tune from a Scottish ballad that actually, it was an old Scottish ballad called The Great Silkie, and a student by the name of James Waters wrote a much actually more beautiful tune to it than the original traditional tune. So we're talking about at least 4 people who had a hand in this song, and at least a couple of countries. I come and stand at every door, though none can hear my silent tread. I knock and yet remain unseen, for I am dead, for I am dead. I'm only 7, though I died in Hiroshima long ago. I'm 7 now, as I was then. When children die, they do not grow. My hair was scorched by the swirling flame. My eyes grew dim, my eyes grew blind. Death came and turned my bones to dust, and that was scattered by the wind. I need no fruit, I need no rice, I need no sweets, nor even bread. I ask for nothing for myself, for I am dead, for I am dead. All that I ask is that for peace you fight today, you fight today, so that the children of the world may live and grow and laugh and play. So why did we come here today? Not to bum you out necessarily. We want to talk about how Hiroshima responded to the terrible tragedy which befell it. So Richard and I, as I said, went to Japan. We went to the Peace Park and the museum. And most of the time in Japan, we wanted to be on our own. But for this, we hired a guide. And her name was Miss Sato. She asked us to call her Sato-san. San is the honorific that the Japanese use. So here is Sato-san showing me a picture of the dome before the bombing and after. Of course, we could see the after immediately. So in January of 1946, the city of Hiroshima decided, as part of its reconstruction, to build a peace memorial park. So the city of Hiroshima decided that they wanted to make an example to the world, to show what had happened and to urge, encourage, beg the world not to ever let it happen again. And one of the things that they built was a cenotaph for the A-bomb victims, which was officially unveiled on August 6th, 1952. I just have to bring this a little closer, okay. In 1955, the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum was added, and additional buildings and monuments are continually being added to this enormous peace park. So the cenotaph contains a stone chest housing a register of those known to have died of exposure to the bomb, both immediately and over time. Names are still being added, at least as of a few years ago when we were there. But as of August 6, 2006, it contained 247,787 names. It is surrounded by the Pond of Peace, and across the pond is the Flame of Peace, which will be extinguished when all nuclear weapons have disappeared from the earth. Looking through the cenotaph, you can see the flame, and beyond it, the dome. So this monument explains how and why it was decided to preserve the dome rather than to demolish it, as it was done to many other buildings that were demolished. Monuments such as this dot the Peace Memorial Park everywhere. And we're just going to show you a very small fraction of, at that time, there were 63 monuments and shrines. And we have this Hiroshima Peace Reader, which we bought at the museum, that lists all the 63 shrines and what they're all about. But some of the ones that kind of stuck out in my mind were, for example, a monument to the Hiroshima District Lumber Control Corporation, a monument to the employees of the Hiroshima Post Office. So many, many monuments of that nature. One monument that we found particularly moving, I don't think we have a picture of it, but it was a monument in memory of Korean victims of the A-bomb. Between 30,000 and 40,000 Korean people, many who were forced laborers brought from the Korean peninsula, were in Hiroshima at the time of the bombing. And this is Japan's acknowledgement, which they had long denied, that Koreans were brought in as forced laborers and that they perished in the bombing. So the peace clock across the river from Peace Memorial Park chimes at 8:15 a.m. every morning. This memorial mound contains the ashes of approximately 70,000 victims of the bombing. Every year on August 6th, religious groups hold an interfaith ceremony at this site to console the souls of the victims. Some of you may have heard of Sadako Sasaki. She was 2 at the time of the bombing, and at the age of around 11, she developed leukemia. And as we talked about, there's a belief that if you fold 1,000 cranes, you get your wish. Sadako started folding cranes, hoping she would get to 1,000, and her wish would be that her life be spared. According to one story, she made it to 644 cranes, and then she succumbed from her illness. But her classmates folded 1,000 cranes and buried them with her. And ever since, Sadako has become a symbol of the innocent victims of war. And paper cranes have become a symbol of peace. And our lovely guide, Sato-san, gave us 2 peace cranes that she had made herself. We put them on our Christmas tree every year. So the Peace Memorial Park in Hiroshima receives so many paper cranes, they don't know what to do with them. So they string them together in bright garlands, as you can see. And they still have more left over, so they take them and make them into paper postcards. And Sato-san gave us these postcards that have a picture of our next monument that we're going to show is the monument to Sadako. So Sadako's classmates raised money to erect a monument to comfort her soul and express a desire for peace. And at the top is a girl holding a golden crane. There's a better shot of it in the next shot. Children stand in line for a long time, waiting their turn to ring the bell. That you see. Okay, and in this picture, Sato-san and I are ringing the bell together. So we didn't take very many pictures at the Peace Memorial Museum. It was really too shocking and sad. Um, what was most moving to me were the torn scraps of clothing that parents had donated to the museum, all that was left of the clothing that their children were wearing when the bomb struck. And with each bit of clothing was a story, such as, I found my daughter dying. We brought her home and tried to nurse her, but she died 3 days later. Or, I found my son's body, just a few scraps of clothing covering him. So you can go to the Peace Memorial Museum website, actually, and see pictures. And again, we decided not to show you the gory pictures. And we might have a little bit of time afterwards to stick around and you can look through this reader. But one of the few pictures that I did take in the museum was of this petition, which you can't really read it that well, but it was presented to us to sign on the way out. And what it reads is, we, the undersigned, request all states to join the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons as soon as possible. And I had copies of this petition, and I would pass them around when I made presentations like this to get more signatures, and I would send the petitions to the address in Hiroshima that was given, but I don't have to do that anymore. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons has been ratified by 86 nations, which was the number that was needed, and it went into effect on January 22nd, 2021, without a whole lot of fanfare, so you may not have heard of it. I don't know if anyone here knew that. There is, in effect, a Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and it includes a comprehensive set of prohibitions on participating in any nuclear activities, including undertakings to develop, test, produce, acquire, possess, stockpile, use, or threaten to use nuclear weapons. The Secretary General of the United Nations is designated as depository of the treaty. While this is a historic document and a rare and precious victory in the struggle for world peace, and it is celebrated every year on January 22nd, some peace organizations celebrate that. But it should be noted that none of the current nuclear powers are signatories of the treaty. That means, of course, us and all the other nuclear powers. And neither is Saudi Arabia, a country that, as we speak, appears to be in negotiations with the United States to possibly creating a path to enrich nuclear fuel using US-supplied reactors. Although negotiations may have stalled due to Trump's insistence that Saudi Arabia normalize their relations with Israel, recent events such as this and so many more remind us that we still have a long way to go before peace can be achieved. But what was really uplifting to me was the way the city of Hiroshima took a lead in trying to get the prohibition on nuclear weapons signed and put into effect, and how that worked. And the mayors of Hiroshima over the years, different mayors, worked with the mayor of Nagasaki and mayors of cities all over the world to make themselves peace cities. So I'm going to end this portion of the presentation with a song that I never did find out whether it's a true story, but it's a very beautiful story about two women who came to a realization about their separate but intertwined histories. It's called 1,000 Candles, 1,000 Cranes. My grandmother had 3 sons. She dreamed about her children's children. Then came 1941. Only one son would see the war end. Joseph died marching in Bataan, Frank on the sands of Iwo Jima. The day the bomb destroyed Japan, she thanked God and Harry Truman. She blamed the godless Japanese for having crushed her sweetest dreams. 1,000 candles for my son, every day I will remember. In Illinois, far from her past, Miss Nakamura still remembers. She was 6 when she saw the flash that turned the world to smoke and ashes. Mother taught her daughter well, run from the fire to the river. There she found a living hell, but not a mother or a father. Though she survived with just a scrape, her family vanished into space. 1,000 sons, 1,000 cranes, every day I will remember. My grandmother had 3 sons. She never dreamed she'd have a daughter. But at the age of 81, she met a nurse named Nakamura. It was a question only meant to make some talk and pass the hours, about a picture by the bed, a photograph of 2 young soldiers. Hatred and anger stored for years slowly melted into tears. 1,000 candles, 1,000 cranes, every day I will remember. I've a picture in my mind of 2 women slowly walking. August 6th, 1985. Walking to church to light a candle. And they once asked me to explain why grown men play such foolish games. 1,000 candles, 1,000 cranes, every day